The moment Brandon Ellis denied my promotion request still plays in slow motion in my mind. I sat across from him in his glass-walled office on the 14th floor of our downtown Chicago headquarters at Apex Dynamics, a mid-sized management consulting firm specializing in financial tech transitions. My portfolio lay open between us, 2 years of senior-level analytics, pipeline forecasting, risk models, and cross-team onboarding plans I'd quietly carried while officially titled as a mid-level operations coordinator. 6 years at the company. I had built the invisible scaffolding that kept client handoffs smooth and dashboards reliable. Brandon, fresh from Wharton with the polished confidence of someone who'd never spent a decade grinding in the trenches, barely glanced up from his laptop. His jawline was sharp, his shirt perfectly pressed, but his eyes held that distant glaze of a man already calculating his next promotion. Sophia, he said finally, the name sounding foreign on his tongue after 2 weeks on the job. We're looking for someone with more vertical range for senior analyst. You're solid where you are. Stay in your lane. The words landed like a quiet slap. I smiled, polite, professional. The same smile I'd perfected over years of smoothing over other people's oversights. Inside, something shifted. A cold clarity settled in my chest, like the first frost on Lake Michigan in early November. I nodded once, gathered my papers, and walked out without another word. That evening, back in my small Lincoln Park apartment, I poured a glass of inexpensive Cabernet and pulled out my employment contract. Page by page, I highlighted every bullet under job responsibilities, data review, internal scheduling, formatting weekly briefs. Nothing about forecast models. Nothing about cleaning up presentation decks. Nothing about jumping into Slack threads to prevent escalations or rerouting legacy data paths when the CRM glitched. The next morning, I arrived exactly at 8:30 a.m., no early login. No head start on the quiet tasks I'd always handled before anyone asked. When Brandon flagged me down near the coffee station, his voice carrying that false sunny clip executives use when they assume you'll fix their mess, he said, "Hey, can you pull the integration metrics from last quarter for the Meridian client? I need them formatted for the deck." I met his eyes calmly. "That's not listed under my contractually assigned duties. You'll want to reach out to data operations for that." He laughed, thinking it was a joke. I didn't laugh back. I simply noted the timestamp in my notebook and continued to my desk. By noon, he'd asked for 3 more things I used to handle on autopilot: client tagging updates, an onboarding tracker sync with the CRM, and a quick reconciliation on the risk model. Each time, the same measure response: not in my scope. Try compliance for that one. That falls under strategy. Let me forward the right contact. Polite. Even. Delivered with the precision of someone handing back someone else's spilled coffee. The air in the open plan office changed almost immediately. Whispers rippled between the rows of monitors. The product lead glanced over her screen with a puzzled tilt of her head. A junior analyst mouthed something to her neighbor. I felt their eyes, but I kept my focus on the single assigned task in front of me, reformatting the Q3 calendar blocks into a clean table. It was mundane work that had never earned thanks before, but now it felt like armor. My spine straightened slightly. The constant low hum of tension I'd carried for years, the weight of 2 jobs for 1 salary, began to lift. That first week, small cracks appeared. 2 client emails went unflagged in the shared inbox. A compliance meeting request sat unopened in Brandon's queue. The onboarding tracker drifted out of sync, causing one kickoff call to start late. I knew exactly how to fix each issue. The legacy SharePoint mapping for Meridian's legal documents lived only in my head after years of voluntary maintenance. The quiet Slack interventions I used to make before blockers became crises. But I didn't lift a finger. I watched the subtle stumbles, like someone observing a building's foundation settling after removing a hidden support beam. No drama. No venting. Just absence. By Wednesday, the receptionist paused by my desk with a concerned whisper. "Everything okay? Sophia? You seem different." I smiled gently. "Perfectly fine. Just working within my official duties." It felt clean, like dropping a backpack I'd forgotten I was carrying. My sleep improved. The clenched jaw I'd woken with for months relaxed. I wasn't being petty. I was finally honoring the boundaries Brandon had so clearly drawn. People started circling my desk more often, not aggressively, but with the hesitant energy of birds sensing a storm. One of the new hires asked about the Trillium integration checklist I'd always maintained voluntarily. "Try legal or risk management now," I replied evenly. He blinked, confused, as if I'd just rewritten office gravity. The invisible net I'd spun for years, catching dropped balls, rerouting chaos, explaining platform quirks when Brandon stumbled, had vanished. And the ice beneath everyone's feet felt suddenly thinner. Brandon's cologne announced him before his voice did that Thursday morning, a sharp, overpriced scent that lingered like duty-free ambition. He tapped the edge of my desk. "Sophia, chase down the audit files for Trillium? Their team is pushing for the deck by end of day." I didn't look up from my screen. Not my responsibility. Finance or compliance should have those. He paused longer than usual, then walked away with a slack expression, as if the vending machine had finally stopped dispensing free items. By midday, 3 more requests redirected. Sales needed calendar shuffling for client transfers. Ops wanted data formatting. Each met the same calm redirection. No eye rolls. No sighs. Just factual boundaries delivered in the same steady cadence. The silence after he left rattled them most. I wasn't angry or dramatic. I had simply stopped the engine, and the plane was beginning its subtle descent. By afternoon, the Trillium team postponed their call, citing incomplete prep. Translation: no one could locate or massage the files in the chaotic filing system I'd once quietly organized. Onboarding descended into mild panic over missing policy docs I used to upload weekly without prompting. I sipped my coffee and continued my assigned calendar work, feeling the external chaos separate from my own steady orbit. That night, logging off at exactly 5 p.m., for tasks that once ran on my autopilot sat unresolved. The daily cross-team Slack summary I'd posted for Cohesion? Absent. Outdated client codes in the master sheet? Unfixed. Entropy had its moment, and the office felt its first real chill. Absence, I realized, echoes louder than presence when you've been the quiet glue holding fragile structures together. Brandon's dashboard still showed green bars, ticket volume steady, milestones nominally on track, but throughput wasn't cohesion. He saw outputs. I knew the hidden workflow beneath, the undocumented threads and legacy paths that only my voluntary labor had kept alive. The week closed with a fragile quiet. People noticed the shift, but not fully yet. The real unraveling was just beginning. Friday morning brought the first visible fracture. The Latchman Equity quarterly positioning call had been calendared for weeks. Brandon arrived in his sharpest blazer, striding into the glass boardroom with the swagger of someone who believed keywords and confidence alone could dazzle. I sat at my desk, typing an unrelated assigned brief, listening through the thin walls as the train began derailing almost immediately. He fumbled the opening delta between margin percentages and growth figures. His hand trembled visibly on slide 3. A major revenue stream slipped entirely from his recap. The client team's measured voices cut through the glass. "We're rescheduling. This doesn't appear fully prepped." Brutal. Corporate politeness masking disappointment. The call ended early. 10 minutes later, an internal exec pinged Brandon in the thread. "Who prepped you?" Silence answered. No frantic messages reached my inbox this time. I wasn't on the rescue list anymore. Brandon had made that clear. By afternoon, Brandon paced the kitchen area, phone pressed to his ear, attempting to spin gold from a spreadsheet still littered with placeholder text. Insert client name here. TBD. I watched from afar while completing my official Q3 formatting task. The ops dashboards looked pristine on the surface, green everywhere, but lacked the connective tissue my undocumented work had provided. No one juggled the silences anymore, the accidental email omissions I used to catch. The Salesforce glitches I rerouted via 6-year-old access paths only I remembered. The shoulder taps before meetings to ensure decks were complete. People began approaching me more directly now. Not demands, but careful questions laced with unease. Sophia, do you know where the Trillium SharePoint map lives? One analyst asked. Try legal now, I replied with a small smile. He left looking unsettled, as if the office map had suddenly redrawn itself. Whispers grew. The receptionist shared quiet concern again. Junior staff exchanged glances near the printer. I felt their confusion, but remained steady. My inbox quieter than it had been in years. My heart rate even. The building shook externally, but I sat centered because I'd removed myself from the fragile system, revealing it had never been the processes holding it together, it had been me. By Monday, the energy shifted to a heavier stillness. Not full panic, but the kind that settles when the informal safety net disappears. Brandon's voice carried sharper across the floor near the IT pod. Why is Latchman escalating? Where's the Trillium deck status? 6 unresolved marketing tickets. He didn't understand that visible metrics masked deeper rot. The pipes beneath the polished surface were corroding. At 12:23 p.m., Trillium escalated publicly. An exec forwarded a complaint thread to Brandon, CCing directors. 3rd delay this week. Losing confidence in transition support, Brandon spun in his office like a man grasping at smoke. He refreshed dashboards fruitlessly. I filed my 2 scheduled reports and updated my personal log of voluntary tasks now outside scope, not for revenge, but for the clarity of potential future questions. You were warned. The document would read if needed. The Director of Strategy, Laura Chin's sharp suits, sharper instincts, appeared at my desk mid-afternoon. Her tone was careful, professional. Sophia, can we talk? We moved to a quiet overflow office. She closed the door. Help me understand the workflows falling apart. I slid across the single sheet I'd prepared. My contractual duties. 10 clean bullets. These are what I'm required to do. Everything else, onboarding prep, integrations, handoffs, briefing decks, was voluntary. As of last week, I stopped. Laura studied the page long and hard. Why? She asked quietly. I asked for acknowledgement of the senior work I'd been doing for 2 years, I said simply. I was told no. So I adjusted. She tapped the paper. This is accurate. Yes. Silence stretched. Then she nodded slowly, seeing not just the paper but the quiet labor behind Brandon's illusion of control, the invisible threads. Voluntary muscles propping up his dashboard bravado. Recognition didn't arrive with fanfare. It whispered first. Later that afternoon, an HR notification updated my profile. Pay band expanded. No title change. No announcement, just a quiet raise acknowledging the one job I'd always done while they looked away. I closed the tab without outward reaction, breathing slow. 2 hours later, Brandon disappeared from the active Slack channels. The announcement followed softly, reassigned to a strategic project role. Effective immediately. No drama.
No farewell.
The ship lightened by removing dead weight. I returned to my desk and opened a blank document. It was time to document everything. System maps, handoff protocols,
naming kumbantyon si de standardisa kiatli.
Backup logic for CRM failures. Flowcharts. Decision trees. Escalation ladders. Not for glory, but protection. When the building forgets its builders, you document so silence can't be mistaken for weakness again. From then on, I chose my extras carefully, only the fires worth extinguishing. I moved like a ghost with boundaries, doing enough to maintain alignment, but never letting them confuse my effort for servitude. The question, who is truly irreplaceable, had been answered without words. I had timestamps, logs, receipts. If forgotten again, I'd simply stop once more. The new workflow diagrams appeared on the company drive midweek, polished, logical, with my distinctive spacing, color coding, and dotted contingency arrows.
No signature.
But unmistakable to those who knew. The new ops lead, a thoughtful woman named Elena who observed before speaking, walked the team through them in the glass conference room. I didn't attend. They had the map now. Halfway through, a senior VP paused at the whiteboard, tapping the diagram corner. "You did this, right?" he asked me directly later, voice low. I met his gaze without nodding or speaking. He turned to Elena. "We won't make that mistake again. No performance. Just a subtle correction rippling through the organization." Brandon's name never surfaced. Legacy doesn't need applause, it functions. Small acknowledgments followed. A nod at the printer. A quiet thanks for the diagram. Someone left my favorite pens on my desk anonymously. I continued precisely. Not more, not less. When passing screens showing my logic embedded in decks, I felt permanence. My presence baked into every branch and workaround, speaking my language even in signed. The air differed now. Colleagues stopped by not for files or fixes, but questions like, "What do you think of this rollout?" Or, "Will this hold under pressure?" They treated me as compass, not cabinet. I spoke little in meetings. Corporate theater never suited me, but once invited to the leadership offsite to observe and suggest. The first time felt like error. Now tradition. A chair waited near the table's end. My same worn notebook, color-coded tabs no one else deciphered, accompanied me. 3-column layout. Observation. Implication. Solution. Days I said nothing still left the room heavier than most speeches. When the notebook closed with its soft thunk in post-meeting quiet, glances came reflexively now. They'd learned the rhythm. Open notebook, something fixes soon. Closed without notes, something already broken. They remembered the green dashboard's masking collapse. The dangerous silence when untracked, unthanked labor ceased. Power isn't always the microphone. Sometimes it's capping the pen, letting silence teach what words couldn't. My notebook stays close. When it remains closed too long, they listen harder now, knowing the cost of forgetting the quiet contributors who hold structures together unseen. The story didn't end with triumph or revenge. It settled into recalibration. Brandon's reassignment created space, but scars lingered in processes. I documented relentlessly, choosing interventions deliberately. The pay adjustment helped, but the real shift was respect earned through absence, not presence. Reflection came evenings on my balcony overlooking the city lights. 6 years of invisible labor. 1 denial. A week of literal boundaries, and the house of cards revealed its true fragility. Not built on systems or dashboards alone, but on unacknowledged human effort. The moral question lingers. How often do we mistake silence for agreement, or quiet competence for replaceability? When the glue steps back, what remains? In offices across America, thousands like me whisper the same boundaries now. The creaking beams remind leaders, value the unseen, or hear the collapse. Yet I harbor no bitterness. Clarity replaced exhaustion. I perform my role fully. Extras by choice. Colleagues consult me as partner, not utility. The diagrams circulate. My logic embedded. The notebook rests closed sometimes, but they watch it now, aware of the power and restraint. When it opens, fixes flow. When it stays shut, lessons echo. In the end, the office didn't burn. It adapted. Wiser for the fracture. Brandon faded into strategic obscurity. I remained at the same desk. Same plant struggling in fluorescent light. Same mug proclaiming, world's okayest analyst, a title now worn with quiet irony. But the silence speaks differently. They ask what's missing. I answer selectively. Because true power lies in knowing when to withhold, letting consequences whisper louder than demands ever could. The human cost of undervaluing quiet labor haunts corporate America still. Promotions chase flash. Dashboards dazzle. But the real architecture hides in unlogged hours and intuitive fixes. My story echoes in countless cubicles. The day the glue walked away revealed the structure's true weakness. Leaders forget at their peril. Employees learn boundaries the hard way. Between them stretches the gray space of recognition deferred until absence forces reckoning. Years later, new hires hear fragments. The weak dashboards lied. The client threats. The sudden reassignment. They see my diagrams as gospel. My chair at offsites as tradition. But few grasp the emotional core, the cold clarity after denial. The lifting weight of voluntary overwork. The clean freedom of literal compliance. It wasn't revenge. It was recalibration. A reminder that every organization rests on unseen shoulders. Ignore them, and feel the floor give way. The notebook closes tonight as I write this reflection. The team glances up, remembering. The silence teaches still.